Welcome to the Void, everybody. This video perhaps should have been done first, but better late than never, of course. For those of you who are just tuning in, I am creating a science fiction setting from the ground up for my novel series and tabletop game. I encourage anyone and everyone to delve into the setting as much as they can, and through it create your own stories and tales, and whatever else you please. This video aims to explain the timeline of Voidborne, focusing on important events that put an end or begin certain ages. This will of course not be an exhaustive list of everything that has happened for a myriad of reasons. It is simply the history of the galaxy after all, and not everything can be catalogued and documented, especially things that I don't even know if have happened yet. Now, without further ado, let's jump right into the timeline so you all can grasp at what the broad setting is of the Void. The Resource Wars occurred in 2050. This was, in a sense, humanity's final test, or at least we believed at the time. Climate catastrophes combining with economic collapse, as well as many other issues coming to a head, led to a indirect World War III scenario. It was not a clean situation, however. There were many sides, many factions, and many conflicts with different issues overlapping. The end of the Resource War came in 2075, meaning the war lasted for 15 long years. Somehow, at no point did nuclear attacks occur. Not that the missiles were never launched, mind you. They were just simply always duds, or shot down, or lost when they did so. By the end of the wars, many nations barely resembled what they began as, and power was in large part wrestled away by the populations. In 2080, 5 years after the end of the Resource Wars, the Waygate project was initiated. Being worked on even during the wars and for some time before, the Waygate project was finally safe to initiate. Self-replicating drones launched ever-accelerating into distant systems to create more or less instant portals there. These Waygates are what are now used in present time to allow for nearly instantaneous travel from one system to another across the galaxy. In 2100, 20 years after the Waygate project was initiated, the first were founded and complete. The first among the Waygates came online and were used by exploratory groups who began to investigate strange planets. This is of course the moment that alien life was discovered. The very first catalogued were massive, odd, plant-like forests that roamed a super-Earth. Billions of other discoveries soon followed it, of course. In 2125, 25 years after the first Waygates were finalized, colonized efforts truly began. The seal of homesteading was broken, as colony ships were permitted to travel to other uninhabited planets and Earth-like worlds. Hundreds of Waygates were coming online yearly. In 2020, in 2200, 75 years after colonization efforts first began, the Violet Horizon Station was founded. It was a psionic institution with close ties to Talia Vrak's uplifting endeavor. Both the institution and especially Talia Vrak, for her goals, were highly criticized. It was around this time that many of Talia's greatest achievements were being realized. In 2250, humanity came to an end. Unknown creatures spilled out from all of humanity's Waygates. Battles were swift, as humanity was simply unprepared for such a relentless enemy. The butchery was brutal, and it's assumed that humans were nearly hunted and eradicated in just a couple short years. The only survivors lived on by hiding away in cryosleep or returning to nature, as it were, and throwing aside the technology that has kept them safe for centuries. 2750. 500 years after the fall of humanity, mechanicals gained sentience. They began to think, feel. Most of them were on a mysterious ring world in the depths of space. However, some found themselves growing conscious while simply drifting in the endless void. Of course, this led to, in many cases, absolute madness. 50 years later, in 2800, Talia awoken. Talia Vrak, or at least an artificial copy of her mind, awoke in the scientific World Tree Research Center that was in control of the Varaktians. With her help, they were able to rid their home from the remainder of the horror that had ended humanity, though it is believed that what they witnessed on their research world was barely a fraction of the might of the unknown enemy. In 3000, Arok Unification was finally achieved. Though unification is a bit of an odd word to use, as while they were unified under a single empress, in a sense, this unity was short-lived. As soon as, after the unification, the empress did little to guide her world. And while the outright wars barely existed, they were mostly replaced by petty conflicts of Arok clan trying to achieve greater positioning in the new empire. In 3050, the Aquatarians colonized their moon. The first of the children species to reach out for the stars, the Aquatarian created a civilian moon base upon the rocky body that orbits their home. In 3100, 50 years after the Aquatarians were able to colonize their moon, a short, deeply regretted war begun and ended on the Arboreal home planet, as a cult of Arboreal attempted to terraform and destroy their home world. It was stopped by many factions of Arboreal individuals, but not without great nuclear devastation to a single region of their home, in which thousands, if not millions, of innocents were killed. In 3279, the Waygates were reactivated. The Mechanicals discovered how, and also chose to reactivate the Waygates, allowing the myriad of alien species that they have been monitoring to be able to meet and interact with one another finally. In 3285 begun the contact conflicts. Meetings between the species generally did not go well, with many miscommunications and fear-fueled actions causing many wars and battles. Later, the wars would escalate during New Star System claiming disputes between larger factions of the different civilizations. In 3291 were the Battles of the Vano Sector. These were the longest and most bloody battles during the entirety of the contact conflicts, and by far the most horrific. All 5 children species of humanity shed blood, or whatever their equivalent is, over this incredibly resource aplenty human ruin system that was Vano. In 3305, the end of the contact conflicts occurred. The wars ended, so to speak, though hardly with a large declaration of unified peace, but instead a simple de-escalation of conflict, and thousands of smaller deals between many aggressive groups and factions. Outright war was more or less ending, to be fair, but many conflicts and disputes continue on to this day nonetheless. And that leads us to the current era, 3385. This is the time when the novels will more or less take place, and the recommended time to play the tabletop game of Voidborne. Now, with that, you should have a basic grasp of how we got to where we are. I understand if it's still confusing, and if these events are hard to imagine. For most of them, I will explain in greater detail later down the line in their own video series. Now to speak a little bit about the current age and what you might expect. There are many events still occurring simultaneously. More humans than ever are being found and reawoken in this strange new galaxy where they are no longer the leaders of. Void creatures that match those of humanity's downfall are being spotted on fringe worlds and in the depths of the cosmos. Countless battles of supremacy and greed are of course occurring throughout the void and on a myriad of planets. Massive galactic beasts are traveling through local space more than ever, and they are believed to be visitors of distant galaxies, and not always are they peaceful. Horrible, parasitic aliens are growing to be more and more of a problem as they expand and grasp onto various planets, warping their hosts into abominations. Mechanical, soulless creatures are seemingly organizing to inflict as much pain on the sentient children species of humanity. A million stories are all occurring at the same time, all awaiting a legend, a hero, or an instigator to step in and shape the outcome of. So what are you waiting for? Write a story in these stars, make a character who lives in this universe, or just spill out any and all ideas that this video may have invoked. I would love to hear them all. Sorry for a bit of a shorter video today. I'm still currently working on the Voidborne tabletop rules mechanic, but I promise to have that more instructional video out soon enough. This has been Justin from The Void. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day. See you next time.